The week after a loss in the game is the worst for Ohio State, but you've made it to Thursday. You're back on the podcast daily, and Dr. Anthony Schlegel is in session with just the perfect juicy cure for what ails you. Schlegs, how are we feeling? Much better than Saturday night, I bet.
Well, let me tell you something. I mean, Saturday at about 3:45 was terrible. Sunday was kind of terrible. Monday was really terrible. Tuesday, it started to get a little better, but I'm still thinking about it. Wednesday, and now we're in Thursday. Okay, so I'm, not necessarily over it, but it's just like on the countdown clock has started. What are you doing to beat that team up north? And honestly, I'm going to start just calling them that all the time. Just because I'm going to do my part. And if my part's just not calling them Michigan, I'm just going to call them the team up north, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my part. Now, I will say, even from my time in the Woody, I don't use blue pens. Like, Urban eliminated all blue pens. There's no blue pens. I don't even think the Sharpie or the highlighters were yellow, right? Because Mesa Blue was out the building. I think you had like orange, which is terrible because it's darker, or green, but that's what you had to do. So I'm just going to do my part. I think it's now 360 days until that game happens. I don't know because I'm not that in the weeds of it, but I'm just going to start doing my part all the time.
It has to start now, right? I mean, there's 3 years in a row of this for Ohio State, and they can hold out hope. We've talked about it throughout the week. There is a path back to the college football playoff for Ohio State. If they get those 3 results, Oklahoma State wins, Florida State loses, Georgia wins. Hey, Ohio State's right back there in the same situation they were a year ago. I wonder, Schlegs, for you, how much better would that make you feel, if at all, and how much would that change, just thinking about what happened in the game?
From the one that, last year, right, we got in, right?
Yep.
So did it make you feel that much better? You had a chance. It doesn't really matter because we're always, again, winning a natty is winning a natty. And then you had this mark on it. And it goes back to more from a player perspective and what do you hang your hat on? And at Ohio State, we hang our hat on beating our rival, and that's that team up north. And that's how all seasons are judged. I remember in 2004, it was not a great season. We go 3-0, then we go 3-3, not what you want. We end up losing to Purdue later in the season. And then we beat Oklahoma State in a bowl game, but we beat that team up north at home, and they end up winning the Big Ten and going to a Rose Bowl. It wasn't a great year. It was a terrible year, but it was above a terrible year. So it was somewhere in the middle of that simply because we won the game.
Right.
And then you had, in 2005, you had the loss to Texas. You had the close loss to Penn State, your co-Big Ten champs. But you beat that team up north in the big house. And the offense came back and rallied, and we ended up winning that game. That was really Troy's kind of coming out party for 2006. But you won the game, right? And then coaching, I remember what it felt like in 2011 to lose that game. And you wanted it so bad for the players and for Fick, and that season was 6-7. You win that game and you go 7-6. Is it different? No, it's still a transition, but you won the game, So, and we've had so much success against them. And the team is direct. I mean, there's 100% no doubt that the team up north is significantly a better football team than it has been in recent years. I mean, it's a good football team. They know what they do. They recruit what they do, and they execute what they do. And that's where, early on, before the game happened, I said it's going to come down to the quarterback position. And if you look at the quarterback position, I believe Kyle was 18 of 30. Okay, so a little over 50%. The 2 picks, obviously one on the last play of the game, but the one that hurt you was the one where they took it down and inside the 10 for a goal line. Mm-hmm. Defense took them that one hurt you, right? You lose by 6. And I wasn't saying that J.J. McCarthy is going to be significantly better than Kyle McCord. On the stat sheet, Kyle had 270 yards of passing. I think J.J. had less than 150. We knew that, but he was very efficient. And that's what it came down to, right? The turnover margin in this game, though one was on the last play of the game, it's still 2-0 in favor of that team up north. And that's in this game, the rushing battle, 156 to 107. There were times, and we had some great answers, man. We were down 14-3. Offense came back, answered the field goal at the end of the second quarter, and people can, and I agree with other people's opinions. I totally understand where you're coming from on it. I just thought that was the right play. People were like, well, why are you talking about, like, what does it matter that you start on the 3-yard line? Guys, the game of football, situational football, backed up, even getting a field goal in that circumstance is going 56 yards to be able to kick that field goal. That's like 3 points.
Okay.
And their kicker got one. We didn't. That went into this. We talked about the special teams being significant in this game. That would have got us, had some momentum because we were able to drive it 56 yards, kick a field goal, go into halftime, and you're only down by 1. So field position mattered. Didn't put, very well in that game. We were always having to drive 75 yards every single time to score. They had better field position. Those are the small nuanced battles when you talk about in the game of football, running the football, turnover margin, field position, because predicated upon where you are, the likelihood of scoring when you have better field position is better. It's just how the game is. So, there were a lot there. I thought Fleming had a couple of really great catches in it. That one drive where Kyle was like 4 for 4. That was a great drive by him. We had the one where we rushed for more yards on that one drive than we did the entire first half. I was like, typed in my notes, here we go. Love to see that. Smouth football. We're winning the line of, the line of scrimmage there. But but the consistency of it, is something that you have to have throughout the entire year. So, but these are all things that are going to be evaluated right after this. You do have to take a deep breath. You can't let emotions guide you, because when you evaluate, it's very objective, very judgmental. And then there's certain criteria that have to be met, and then you have to adapt and make changes going into 24.
So how does that work, Schlegs, when one game is the most important? It's the one that has the biggest evaluation. I think over the course of the year, there were plenty of things, especially on defense. Like if you were just to say Saturday that the Silver Bullets weren't good enough, like, I don't know if I trust Jim Knowles. That feels like an overreaction compared to the previous 11 weeks. So I guess
I would agree with that statement.
Yeah. So like, what's the balance? Like, how much do you put on what happened in one game, which is the ultimate small sample size, even though it's also the most important game of the year for Ohio State in that rivalry? Like, how much of it, how much stock, I guess, do you put in it? How will that inform the decisions? As you said, you take a break and evaluate how much of that goes to the first 11 and how much goes to the 1.
Well, I think what it is when you're in the 1, did what we call defensively, and let's just take defense because I know it.
Yeah.
Then there was the last drive and getting off the field. And if you look at that last drive, you're down 3. And again, I'm with you guys, man. Like, excuse me, did they get the, did we get the ball back? Like, they scored every single time. Totally get it. It was 3 points, right? I think there was a touchdown. 7 minutes off the clock. You still gave the offense the ball with 1:05 left. Notre Dame, it was 1:20 left, if I'm not mistaken, right? You gave them, and here's the thing. Yeah, you didn't necessarily stop them, but you held them to a field goal. One of the best offenses in the country, one of the best rushing attacks in the country. Like, this is just good on good. They have one of the best defenses in the country. We had one of the best defenses in the country. Good on good. So they chewed up 7 minutes of the clock. And if you go back and you look at the touchdown when you were in man and you had a robber there that could have potentially been a pick. You look at the small things on 4th down where it was just a little bit of a hesitation. It was a little bit of a fit. Corum's 20-yard touchdown run, that was a fit, right? That was do I hit that and make it a phone booth tackle versus I'm a little slow and hesitant. Now it's like 5-by-5 and he runs away from me. Those are all like, am I going to change that defense that I called potentially for that play? I don't know, because I'm not there watching the film. I don't know because I'm not there breaking down what they do or understanding their system. Mm-hmm. Both of those instances, it looked like there was people there to make the play, and they just didn't make the play. Now that's on the execution of the athlete. And you're like, well, get rid of it. You can't, like, again, that's an evaluation process. I'm not a coach. Mm-hmm. All right. So, but we're going to evaluate those things. Now go look on that last drive. It's like, okay, do we need to bring some more pressure to really force the hand? Well, let's say you do, and you give up one. Well, now you're down 2 scores. Completely different dynamic, right? We've held them to a field goal. But this is where I would say, from a coaching perspective, we talk in the weight room all the time about physical literacy, training acumen, whatever you want to call it, just understanding your body and how to train. There's also football literacy and football acumen. And third downs aren't necessarily won on third downs. They're won on 2nd and 8. And on a drive like that, this is the first time in a big game all year that we didn't see the defense necessarily, without having to blitz or do something, make that big play. We saw it in the Notre Dame game on a 4th down. We saw it in the Penn State game where it just completely flipped the script in the field position. And those were all out of base. They weren't anything spectacular. It was just guys executing the call. We really didn't have that necessarily in this game that changed the script. So if you look at the previous 11, we had those moments, and just in this one, we didn't. And guys got to go make them in the game. The best players have to play their best in this game for you to win it. That's really what it boils down to. So I'm not going to sit here and say, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't know, because I don't know what they call. But I just do know that certain instances in the game, 4th down, the 4th downs and 1s are a lot more convertible if they're not 4th and 1, if they're 4th and 2, 4th and 3, Yeah. But where does that start, guys? That starts on 1st and 2nd down. That starts on them running the ball for 5 yards, or getting it back into that. And they had some really good answers. There was the 4th down. I mean, honestly, if you look at what they did, and we said this, their wide receivers were not going to beat you. Consequently, their wide receivers were the ones that were talking the most trash after the game. However, it was Loveland. It was the tight end. I mean, he had 88 yards. That was a great 4th down call. You had Styles right there on the end, and we talked about the discipline of the eye control. We saw that on the touchdown with the safety and a robber. He was right there. That call is kind of questionable, whether or not he had possession. But still, you're there to make the play. Tight end to the flat. Is that an alignment? Should he be in a little wider? Where was his eye control? If that's him on man, boom, that's him directly to the flat. Those are things that you look into the room and you watch and you evaluate what was called. Did they execute the call? Yes or no? Should I have changed the call? Yes or no? No, that was the right call. Then it's all right, then it's just on execution. And we got to coach that better, and they got to perform better. Yeah. So the ownership is on both players and coaches, and I'm always going to go with the coach, because you're never going to sit here and listen to me badmouth players. I just don't do that, because guess why? I was a former player that probably got badmouthed, and rightly so. You probably should have badmouthed me. Okay. So that being said, I'm always going to go focus on the coaches, but I also don't know what they run and what they called. So I can just make the judgment predicated upon how I see an evaluation process looking in that. And no, you can't. It was both. I think it was really, in this game, it was all 3 phases. Offensively, we had opportunities to capitalize. I think the very first series, when Emeka dropped that ball, that moves the chains, that gets you into a rhythm, right? Kyle eventually got into a little bit of a rhythm, but that was critical, right? In this game, every possession matters, every play matters. And so you got to execute, Yeah. So that's just how, special teams, not fair catching it, coming out, that chew up 5 seconds and lost us, 5 to 7 yards because we didn't get back to the 25. Just fair catch that ball. Yeah. Those are all things that go into it. And I just thought Michigan played, that team up north played opportunistic. What would be the other word?
They were the more aggressive team. I think
they were more aggressive, and they executed, man. They executed in areas that we didn't, and we still, despite the shortcomings in the game, we still had the ball with a minute left to go score and win by an extra point.
Yeah, that's why I think it's laughable to hear Roman Wilson suggesting that Ohio State wasn't any more tougher than the previous 2 years or didn't play physically. Like, that to me is nonsense. I would defer to your judgment and Bobby's judgment over just about anybody else when it comes to the toughness part. But I did not see Ohio State get pushed around. I did not see their players back down from a challenge. And they, as you said, like, you can't have been physically outmanned by a very good Michigan team for 4 quarters and then still be one possession away and maybe even one block away from Kyle McCord getting a throw to Marvin Harrison for them to win the game. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, they won the game. They get to say whatever they want, but there's no way that's reality.
No, it's not a reality. I mean, the physicality was there. Listen, at the end of the day, it's the best game of college football that I've watched all year. And we had more mistakes in it, and we still had an opportunity to win the game at the end. So not going to sit here and say that they were tougher, more physical, whatever the case may be. I just thought they out executed us when it mattered. That's it. That's what you do. So now you go back, you evaluate, and you're like, okay, what are the deficiencies? What are the areas that need improvement? Are there coaches changes that have to? I don't know, but you're going to sit down, and when you lose the game, just like if you lose a big sale in your business, you're going to go back and you're going to say why. Like, that could have really got us over the hump. That could have taken us to another level. Why did we miss it? Well, in any good business, at any good football program, when you don't have success, you got to have a hard conversation, hard self-introspection as to why you didn't win. And that's what's going to happen. And whether it's guys that are gone in the portal that don't necessarily need to be here because they don't want the growth, they don't want the competitive excellence, or we need to bring some other kids in, or how do we recruit certain kids, or how do we develop those kids from a coaching perspective? Like, all those things have to be done so that in 24 you can plant the flag and you can go. Like, that's just what it is.
I don't know, 10,000 questions and comments about whether Ryan Day is capable of making those moves, making those decisions after losing 3 in a row. Schlegs, we know that Ryan Day is not going to be fired. As you look from the outside, have you lost
does everybody understand why he's not? I mean, like, there's a lot of things. First off, Ryan is a hell of I'll run this back, So like let's just take first off, he's not getting fired. Why? Gene's leaving in June, right? They're not going to make a new hire for a head football position without an athletic director. That's number one. Number two, the dude's 56-7 in 5 years here. Yes, he's 1-3 versus that team up north. You play in 2020, he's 2-3. Okay, so that's just a fact. You still have an opportunity to go to the college football playoff. You go back and you look at even Urban's reign, at Ohio State. The thing that sets him apart, obviously, he was 7-0, right? He won 3 Big Tens. Ryan has won 2. You look at those seasons, you lost to Iowa. You lost to Purdue. Ryan hasn't lost to the Iowas and the Purdues of the Big Ten, right? He's beaten them all. Yep. The one that he hasn't has been Michigan. So that team up north. But that being said, very similar. Urban was 83-9. Ryan's sitting at 56-7. So over the next 2 years, that could be equated or even better once he gets to that 7th year. So I mean, he's right on par. Like, who else are you going to get? And people are like, throw out other names. Like, you're not getting Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's running the Titans right now. That's what he's doing. And he's a consummate pro, fixing his second year at Wisconsin. I mean, like, who are you going to get? You say the guy from Oregon, does he want to come to Ohio? Like, no, Ryan's the guy. Yeah. They have great continuity on staff. They're recruiting at elite level. It's just, what do we got to go do to win this game? We saw him make the switch and go get Jim Knowles. That was needed because our defense wasn't up to the standard. So then what areas are lacking in the standard? So we got to go address those. That's on him. I feel that he can get that done. And he's going to have another year to do it. And I think he wants to stay and be here to accomplish the mission.
Right. It'll be interesting, Schlegs, to see how many other guys on the roster take that challenge on as well. Because if you look at, there was a lot of conversation last week, guys like Marvin and Emeka and juniors who had not won in the game. They still haven't. If you don't have a surefire first-round grade, I think it'll be really interesting to see how many guys decide to stick around and flip it, because really that's what happened on the other side of the rivalry in 2021. Sure. A lot of guys, a lot of seniors who said, I'm not leaving until this is right. I think that's going to tell a lot in December from Ohio State and what that brotherhood is like, and the investment of those guys to get it flipped. There's a lot of really interesting decisions there.
Yeah, I think you got to look at it as, if they do decide to leave, you can't look at it, and people will, that they didn't want to finish the mission of beating that team up north. So you can't, like, they got to go make a business decision, and part of that, this will be in consideration. Okay, so you can't say, well, they didn't want to. I just want to like put that out there. If the kid has a high grade, like, you know, they're gonna go. You know, and so you can't just say, well, he's leaving because he's not tough and he doesn't want to compete and he doesn't want to beat them. Like, just get that out of your deal, right? So, but I do think that's also where all of that is being taken into consideration. That's also where the transfer portal has to be taken into consideration. There's so many moving parts now with the portal, NIL, recruiting, that are like, it's just a fine balance as to what do you need to bring in, what do you need to develop from within, right? To also continue the continuity of the brotherhood. And it has to be very, very intentional if you do bring kids in, that they understand what they're coming into, and indoctrinating them quickly. And I will say this, that's also where Mick is at his finest, you know? And if you look at this season, you know, relatively healthy. Like, you can't put on the strength and conditioning program AC joints and knees and things of that nature that happen in a physical, violent collision sport of football. I thought our guys were healthy at the end of the year, man. I thought our guys were ready physically to go out there and play. Mick, in that indoctrination of what is needed, this is where he and Ryan will sit down and like, what did we lack in 23? What needs to be that emphasis going into 24 that we can then bring in that verbiage, that language to drive the change necessary to go beat them? Because if you beat them, they are now the standard in the Big Ten because they've won it potentially for the last 3 years. They still got to go play Iowa. I think that they will, because Iowa's offense is just Iowa's offense, but they still won 10 games. Why? Because they played great defense. So, you know, I just think that's where Mick is at his best, but it also is that fine balance as to what are the voids, what do we need to get, who do we get, who do we have? There you go, right? So 2024 is going to look very different. I hope that some guys that don't have that grade decide to stay, because I think that when they taste that victory, it's something that they will hang their hat on for the rest of your lives. And I mean, I know that when you go back and I look at my career, or former players look at the career, they look at what they did in that game.
Yeah.
You know, it's just something that's very special and unique.
Well, there's still a chance for all of them to play a playoff game in 2023. We'll find out on Saturday if Ohio State gets the help they need. And then we'll break down the destination on Sunday on the podcast. And maybe we'll get Schlegs to come back and talk about it next Thursday on the podcast daily. That's when I need the most juice. Once I get to Thursday, the weekend is almost there. You can almost taste it. You just get fired up at the end of the week. Anyway, I appreciate Anthony Schlegel. He's the best. Thanks for joining, Schlegs. I'm Austin Ward.
Absolutely.
This is the podcast daily. We'll talk to y'all later.